Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm talking to you a little bit about Sadhguru, that famous person from India who has so much followers in the West. I'm a person with schizophrenia and I follow Sadhguru. However contradictory this may seem because Sadhguru is an example of mental health and I am not, but I do follow him. What doesn't mean that I understand all that he says, because much of what Sadhguru speaks I cannot grasp so easily. But some ideas I think are worth a discussion. For example, for Sadhguru, he says that an idle person is not so good a thing, but an idle mind is very desirable. What does he mean with that? I think what he means with that is that when he is not working, his mind is thoughtless, and in this manner he can connect himself to some kind of cosmic energy that fulfills him and makes him feel happy, content, and feeling well about life in a general way, feeling perhaps above all loving towards other people. So this feeling of love that he has comes from God, and God comes from a thoughtless mind, more or less like that would be the usual reasoning of so many Oriental thinkers, right? But then there's a problem because this idea of being thoughtless for Sadhguru is so desirable. But in my life, it has a different connotation because for me, when we speak about thoughtlessness, we're speaking of a different feeling in our lives. It goes like this. Suppose you are watching Sadhguru speaking to someone, right? Is he thoughtless in this condition? I don't think so, because he's carefully picking the best words. He's carefully trying to find the most sincere way to speak to his interlocutor, in my opinion. So that would be, in my opinion, not a situation in which he is thoughtless. He will be thoughtless when he's not interacting with someone. But when he's interacting, I wouldn't say that he's thoughtless because he's picking the best possible words. And that, in my opinion, is a thoughtful activity, right? So for me, when we speak of thoughtlessness, it reminds me of psychological torture because when you try to speak, when you try to connect to people, and nothing comes to your mind that suits the situation. So this is for me paranoia, not a pleasant state at all. Because when you cannot figure out any possible thing to say, when you are muted by your own problems, by your own paranoia, that is on the opposite, highly unpleasant. So when you're forced into thoughtlessness, because of your condition of schizophrenia or because of the medicines they give you or whatever, when you're forced into this situation in which you can no longer think properly, in which no thought seems to fit what you're really going, when it is impossible for you to translate yourself to the people around you. You see, the situation when you are in a certain paranoia because nothing really fits. Whatever you say, we have an interpretation. And how to avoid these interpretations? You see, you are paranoid because you're too much concerned about the image you might be displaying. What are people thinking about me? What are people not thinking about me? It's a kind of paranoia, paralyzing paranoia. So this thoughtlessness in these conditions is very different from what Sadhguru is speaking. Because he is speaking of the opposite, that you're so confident, that you're so calm and content, that you can be thoughtless in this condition. You see? So it's very different things. In my opinion, thoughtlessness for him refers to a situation where he is alone. For me, it is a paranoia when I'm interacting with other people. You could say that in my situation, there are so many thoughts coming to your mind, the opposite of Sadguru, so many thoughts coming to your mind that you went canceling them all and entering a state of pure paranoia, which is highly unpleasant. Highly unpleasant. When you cannot communicate what you're feeling inside to the people around you, this is highly unpleasant. So, in my life, I always try to avoid being thoughtless because I wanted to continue interacting with people. And for that, I needed some thoughts. For that, I needed an effort to translate my inner experience in something understandable to those around me. So, two different situations of thoughtlessness. One very pleasant, the other the result of a paranoia, the result of so many thoughts in your mind that one cancels the other and you cannot have any thought at all. You enter into the state of mind where whatever the image you are conveying, this image doesn't please you. So everything becomes unpleasant, every thought becomes denied, and you enter the thoughtlessness. In this case, very unpleasant. It's not so easy to understand, but I'm trying to say that to you today. We could go to another way of reasoning. For Sadhguru, he often speaks of logic in a detrimental manner. Because for him, the idea of God cannot be grasped through logic. And indeed, he has a point there. Many characteristics of God are impossible to understand through human logic. When did the universe begin? The universe had a beginning, or it exists forever. So, if the universe is beginningless, are you able to imagine that in your mind? Not at all, because we are unable to imagine something beginningless. So this answer cannot be answered, this question cannot be answered in a sound, logical manner. And other questions as well, simple questions, for example, why is there evil in the world if God is almighty, for example? Another question that may be impossible to answer. So, relating God, so many questions cannot be put into rationalistic answers. It's more like your feeling. It's more like something that you experience, but that you cannot precisely describe. I agree with that. I feel that in my life also. This pleasure of being connected to something. What is this something? We cannot know, but we are connected to that. So this is the positive side. This is what Sadhguru is always speaking about, right? But unfortunately, for some people with schizophrenia, and perhaps other people as well, sometimes we enter into paranoia, right? We become so obsessed about all possible interpretations of what we're talking about that we start canceling all our communications. All communications are canceled because someone will interpret that in this or that way. There might be so many interpretations of what we speak that we become so uncomfortable and we cannot speak anything at all at the end of the day. This is an experience of paranoia, right? That is very common in schizophrenia and in other circumstances as well. But Sadhguru is perhaps the opposite of paranoia. He is able to talk to people in India or the United States with the same tranquility, with the same confidence. He's never paranoid. Sadhguru is a person who seems to be never paranoid, the very opposite of what I was describing about my life. Right? So logic for him is limiting because if you have a logical mind, you cannot grasp God. Logic for him is very limiting. And I understand that this perception is very subtle. It is not a logical one. I understand. But I would say that in my life, logic was really helpful. Logic was helpful because suppose I enter the paranoia again. I don't know about the possible interpretations of this or that in my life, the possible interpretations of what I speak about. I don't know what happens. But then I may have a reasoning. Okay, I cannot possibly control the minds of those observing me. So that's outside of me. And I perhaps forget about that, and I just speak what I feel logical to speak. This is an attitude to break that situation of total paranoia. Logic. Because if I follow logic only, it's kind of an answer to that situation when you cannot say anything at all. Right? So I say what I feel logical. And in this manner, it's not that I end the paranoia, but I diminish the paranoia through logic. If what I am saying is logical, therefore, the interpretations of what I am speaking concern only to the interpreters, because for me it sounds like logic. If it's logical for me, it is enough. The possible interpretations are the business of those interpreting me, and if they are derogatory, okay, it's their problem, not mine. You see, logic can be used as a tool to avoid paranoia. It's something that you can cling to help you in your speech, to help you translate your inner life to those around you. Logic is helpful in this manner. But perhaps the life experience of Sadhguru was very different from mine. Perhaps he never entered into these states of mind in which we are paranoid. Perhaps he never entered. Perhaps that's the reason he doesn't feel the need of logic in his life. Right? And again, to grasp God, he is right. To understand God, you cannot do that in logical terms. But logic might be useful to stop a ceaseless thoughts in your mind that make you paranoid about what people may or may not interpret about you. So logic is helpful, not in the situation when you are seeking for God, but in another situation in which we're just trying to escape paranoia. So logic for me is a good thing. For Sadhguru, it's limiting. And I understand what he's talking about. But then this video is about some things that might sound contradictory between my speech and his speech. But things that at the end of the day, I would say they're not contradictory at all, because we are speaking of different experiences in our lives, right? Thoughtlessness for him is this fantastic moment when he's totally connected to God. Thoughtlessness for me is the moment of paranoia, when so many thoughts come to your mind that one cancels the other, and you finish and you end as with no thought at all, because so many thoughts come that they cancel one another, and at the end of the day you have no thought at all, and you cannot communicate yourself. Two very different situations. Very different situations. In his case, a very pleasant situation that I understand. In my case, a very unpleasant experience, right? And the taste for logic. Sadhguru is not very enthusiastic about logic. I can feel that in his speech. Whereas for me, I am. Because logic is helpful for me to diminish the paranoia. If I say something logical, the interpretations are the problems of those who are interpreting me, not my problem at all. Right? So this discussion goes far. This is not so simple. This is not so easy to communicate. Right? But I find it very interesting that his speech sometimes is contradictory to mine, although I agree with him. I agree with him, although sometimes his speech is contradictory to my speech. Right? But these questions, they go so far. There are so many possible developments of these reasonings, and they are difficult reasonings actually, because for a person who never experienced God, or for a person who never experienced paranoia, both my speech and his speech may seem meaningless. We're talking about experiences we had in this life, right? And these experiences, both of them, might be difficult to convey to people. God and paranoia, right? But if for some reason you have experienced God or paranoia in your life, maybe you are uh, finding this speech of mine here today resonating in your mind. Maybe you find it, right? Maybe that all humans, from me to Sadguru, we're all trying to escape a paranoia state in our lives with different strategies and with different results. In his life, it seems he never really felt the need for a stronger logic in his life. I felt in my life he didn't. But we're both struggling to be content, to be calm, to be communicative. We're both struggling to translate our inner experiences into something understandable to others. Maybe at the very end of all reasonings, it may be that the struggle is similar or the same. I don't know. Perhaps we could say that everybody is seeking for peace. Everybody is seeking to end the ceaseless thoughts, to end the ceaseless concerns that are so typical of our society in modern times. We're all concerned. We're always concerned. We're always worried. And this is not pleasant at all. And we develop different strategies to cope with that. And in some instances in my life, logic was very helpful. But perhaps he is right, Sadhguru, because the ultimate experience, the ultimate thing that you may achieve in your life, which is your connection to God, that goes independent from logic, in my opinion, right? But I would keep being logical in my interaction with people. Although that is not the path to God, maybe not, I would still keep it in my interaction with other people, right? So this discussion goes far, and there's a lot of debate to do about this. And I am going to publish more videos like this. Thank you for your attention. I hope you appreciate my channel. Please subscribe if you liked what I spoke here today. Bye bye for now.